All right, we're standing here at a patch of about 110-year-old reference forest. This is what has grown back up after the region-wide cutting and burning that occurred all around the tip of the Mid and much of the Lake States up until about 1920. And what we have most of all are very tall aspen in a uniform height, very limited structural diversity in terms of canopy depth, roughness of the canopy. But we have some important accessory species. We've got hard and soft maples, red maple, sugar maple. We've got some red oak as a codominant. There's some non-diseased beech growing right here. When we're thinking about making this kind of forest more resilient to the impacts of climate change, that means getting rid of that dominant smear of green, aspen, over top of everything else. We want to have more diversity of species. We want to increase structural diversity, that in terms of vertical diversity. We want lateral diversity, clumps, patchiness of stem distribution. Diversity is what begets resilience in terms of carbon cycling. What we've learned from other experiments here at the biological station is that when you increase the complexity, the diversity of the forest, that makes it less influenced by year-to-year variation in climate. It makes it more prepared when a new forest pest comes along and takes out one of the dominant species or genera. So what we start with here in these resilience treatments are units that have fairly low diversity to begin with. They're just dominated by 110-year-old big-tooth aspen, which is still growing well. But we want to position this forest to make it more resilient to the impacts of climate change and the ways that climate change will exacerbate other stressors like drought, like insect mortality, and so on. Here we are in Unit 3, one of two resilience treatments in the Adaptive Aspen Management Experiment. The idea here was to transition away from the uniform smear of green, the homogeneous canopy of big-tooth aspen that you see in the distance behind me, and towards more of a mixed codominance by things like sugar maple. Got a fine red oak back here. There's some red maple, American beech. These are species that we that we retained. We retained northern hardwood accessory species such as the maples, beech, and red oak here. We're still going to get some big-tooth aspen back on this site, but it will come back as part of a mixture. It's going to play well with others. It won't be that uniform, dominant canopy layer overtopping everything else. And as a result, this unit will have greater resilience to perturbations like the loss of a single species, 3 drought years in a row, other things that would add on to or exacerbate climate impacts are going to have less of an influence on this system because of the treatments we did now. In terms of the prescription, we elected to retain about 25% of the aspen here. That's an odd number for forestry in this region. We did so in a eastward feathering fashion. We're up on the top of a big interlobate moraine, a big hill. The winds that come up and over that big hill from Lake Michigan are quite strong, and we wanted to set up a condition where the boundary layer, where the wind had to move through an increasing density of trees as it went east through the unit, so that it doesn't slam into the control unit at the eastern end and knock it all down. So we'll see with time whether that 25% aspen retention slows down the winds at all. Another element to the prescription here was the creation of about 3 dozen brush piles. The operators that did this work were, of course, very skilled, very thoughtful. They tolerated some pretty weird requests because this is an experiment. This is an ecology and forestry experiment. And one of our requests was to pile up the tops and limbs and residues into piles about 15 feet in diameter, 6 feet in height, at random locations throughout this unit, and we'll see if we can get that red oak up and out of reach of the deer as it comes up through those slash piles, because otherwise the deer, they find every one. And red oak is a good climate winner, It's especially promising on dry, sandy soils like we have on this unit, and favoring the recruitment of that red oak should serve well in the long term as carbon uptake becomes more and more limited by water. Other aspects of the prescription on this unit were the same. We retained any disease-free beech that we encountered, all paper birch, really anything other than aspen was what we were trying to include along with the aspen that will come back here.
Here in the resilience unit, we've seen a different response hydrologically to the cutting than we did in other treatments. We expected here to see a smaller magnitude change in soil moisture and no change in groundwater, because this is a spot where there are meters and meters of outwash material over the till. We have rarely seen evidence of shallow groundwater at this location because of the parent material and the landscape positions. So here, any water that falls infiltrates rapidly down into the deep groundwater, and we don't see any measurable responses at the surface. In response to our cutting, we didn't see significant changes in soil moisture in this unit, and we didn't see surface water features or changes in vegetation that indicate that there have been more hydric conditions present here. There hasn't been a difference between soil moisture in this unit and soil moisture in the younger cut or our reference stands. So in this unit, depending on landscape position and microtopography, there's a range of soil moisture conditions that provide habitat for various species. There's not the glacial till close to the surface that really controls the ponding and the surface water like we've seen in the other resistance treatment, where we really wanted to focus